We have some huge NHL signings to discuss today, including a couple of big RFAs, and we also have some key goaltenders extended for many years to come. We'll discuss the latest signings coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some pretty significant news here today. We have a lot of signings to discuss, some of which started coming in as late as last evening after we announced the Kirill Kaprizov signing. We got more news from there, and then more again here earlier this morning. So first up from last night, we have Robert Thomas and the St. Louis Blues agreed to terms on a 2-year contract. Pays him an average annual value of $2.8 million, so he will report to training camp on time. Of course, he was already in St. Louis, so there was no issues there with travel or anything like that, so he will be able to go directly to camp, starting with which would be today for physicals, medicals, and all that kind of stuff. On-ice camps mostly start tomorrow. We had heard reports that he wanted at least the same contract as Jordan Kyrou at 2.8, ideally looking for, I think, closer to 3 is what he was looking for, given the fact that he's probably slightly more established, I think, than Kyrou is, but at the same time, the team values him pretty equally. I think at one point, though, they were offering Thomas a little bit less and had to bring their offer up. At least that's what things sounded like. So at least they get the terms agreed to. He gets signed, goes to training camp. Of course, that does create a little bit of a cap issue, but they can likely solve that with a long-term injury reserve placement from Sunkfist, which will offset there. But they very well could end up making a trade to try to free up a little bit of space. We'll have to wait and see what they do in that regard. Now, we also saw last night we got a word on another big extension in Columbus, and that's Elvis Merzlikins, who's on 1 year left on his contract, signs a big 5-year extension at $5.4 million. Now, of course, between he and Korpisalo, Elvis was already the higher paid goaltender, both entering the final years of their deal. Clearly, I think this signifies that they have a little more confidence moving forward with him. But at the same time, when Jarmo Kekalainen was asked about this here today, said, they're not completely opposed to signing Korpisalo either. They had a talk about it before it was announced, so he knew what was going on. And essentially said Korpisalo is going to go into the year, try to have a real solid year, earn a new contract, and kind of go from there. And like they said, they're not completely opposed to signing him. They could have 2 goaltenders under contract, but it might cost them, $9-10 million between the two, which is going to be expensive. But at the same time, right now, they technically can afford it, but we'll see what else they do with other trades and other ways to try to make this team better. I mean, they do want to give themselves flexibility over the next few years. I personally see Korpisalo as being a pretty good trade candidate to improve other areas of the team. They could certainly use help in the forward group, especially at center, and he could be a good young piece that's still in his prime years to help another team to bring that piece back as well to help them. I mean, these players are obviously in a situation where they want to play, be the guy. Korpisalo could possibly be the guy somewhere else, and they could get another player in return to play center, and maybe both sides win. Hard to say what happens, but I do think this Elvis contract could impact Korpisalo, but it may not be immediate. We'll have to wait and see where things go, but there was a lot of rumors around Korpisalo throughout last season that the Columbus Blue Jackets might be looking to make that type of move. We also seen today that the Los Angeles Kings have extended their goaltender, at least what it looks like their goalie of the future, Cal Petersen, on a 3-year contract at $5 million as well. Now, he still has 1 year left, making less than $1 million. And of course, they still have Jonathan Quick making over $5 million for this year and for next year. So that means that next year, if they're both still on the roster, they'd have over $10 million tied up in goaltending. And of course, they have some young guys that are going to be starting to graduate out of entry-level contracts. They added a bunch of vets this year, like Arvidsson and Danault. They certainly could use the cap space. So I do wonder if this could mean that Jonathan Quick might not be with the team next year. Not to really say that's a given by any means. They very well could try to figure out a way to keep both. It's only 1 year, and then Quick would be a free agent. And if he either moved on or if they wanted to re-sign him, they could probably get him for a lot less, considering he'd be in the latter part of his career. We'll see where things go. But Petersen has been with the team now for 3 years. He's only played actually 54 games is all he's appeared in. But of course, he was originally drafted by Buffalo, went the college hockey route, did not play, did not end up signing with the Sabres, did his time at UND, come out, signed with LA, and he's been on a pretty cheap contract, earning his way up through the minors into the NHL on a one-way deal and then getting more starts. So, well, he certainly put in his time, and he's at that age of 26 now where he's pretty much in the prime year. So we'll see where things go, and I wonder what that means, like I said, for the future of Jonathan Quick. Now, we also got word as well from the Islanders that Kiefer Bellows is technically under contract, although to no big surprise, the New York Islanders have not officially announced that, or I'm not even sure if it's completely official and registered with the NHL, because it's not showing anywhere when it comes to cap-friendly and Puckpedia. Nobody seems to know the details, but in Lou Lamoriello's press conference yesterday, he did make mention that Bellows was signed. Now, so that would technically take us down to only having 3 RFAs left, because we have one more signing to talk about here today, and that's Sabres defenseman and former first overall pick from a few years ago, Rasmus Dahlin, comes to terms on a 3-year deal, paying him an average annual value of $6 million. I've seen a mixed variety of opinions on this one. Personally, I think it's pretty good, because you got to keep in mind, when players are at this age, at this stage of their career, you're not only paying for what they've done, but you're paying for what you think they're going to be as well. He's also in restricted free agent years still at the end of this contract. He'll have 1 year left because you have your RFA for up to 7 years before you get unrestricted free agent status. So at the expiration of this contract, he will be an RFA, but will also have arbitration rights. Even though it's a $6 million average, it is a backloaded deal, so it gets more each year. So he gets $5 million in year 1, 5.8 in year 2, 7.2 in year 3. Of course, he's too young to qualify for any kind of trade protection, so that's not included. And the way we go. So obviously his qualifying offer, as these RFAs tend to do, is it's backloaded for a reason. Obviously it helps the team right now with, obviously revenue shortages, but at the same time, it makes sure that their qualifying offer is much higher on their next contract. So obviously at 7.2, you're looking at, more than that for your qualifying offer on the next deal. Usually it's 10% above that. So that's obviously a fair bit more. Going to be pushing $8 million, which I do think he has the potential to be an $8+ million defenseman. If you look around some of the other D-men that have signed big contracts that are still younger, sort of in his category, like a Makar, for example, I think he has the potential to be a similar type of impact defenseman. He's just not there yet. And one thing is, when you don't want to pay or go longer term, you are going to have to pay generally a little bit more on an average annual value. When you get those longer years, you get more term locked up. That's usually when it kind of levels itself out and you get a better AAV. That's why you get the longer term deals done that way. But in his case, it doesn't really make sense, I don't think, for either side to go more than this. It gives him a chance to see where the future of this team goes, see how much they can kind of make ground here in the next 3 years. Obviously, we have the whole Eichel situation that's still not solved. And they have a lot of good young players that are now prospects with the team. They have, another few years of drafting to do before they really start working their way back up the standings. So we'll see what happens. It gives him time to explore that. It gives him time to continue to grow and show the team what he's, made of as well, and what his ceiling's going to be, and they'll get a better idea, and they can lock him up, hopefully, for his sake, at potentially much higher value at that time. So overall, I think it's a win-win and a good situation for both sides. Now, with Dahlin signing and Thomas signing, and of course with the news that the Islanders and Bellows are technically in agreement on something, that leaves 3 RFAs. You get the 2 guys in Vancouver, Quinn Hughes and Elias Petersen, and of course Brady Tkachuk with the Ottawa Senators. Both GMs of those teams did media today, as most teams are doing, considering it's opening day of NHL training camp. Of course, I didn't expect a lot of details out of either side. It's probably in their best interest to not say much, because I know a lot of players and agents especially don't really like negotiating through the media anyway, so it's probably for the best. I know Pierre Dorian in Ottawa just said that they're still confident he will be signed soon. He just kind of said that they're making progress, things are going forward. It's really all he said. Keeps it simple, and that's it. Vancouver, Jim Benning said that he hopes to get them done soon, that things are still progressing, and that's about it. So we really don't have a lot to offer. Like I mentioned before, when it comes to Tkachuk, it sounds like it's a combination of signing bonus and maybe trade protection, because he is eligible for some of that near the end of the contract, at least based on the term that they rumored to be talking about. You have to think, too, with the Kaprizov contract, that maybe that's impacting Brady and Petersen. And you wonder, too, if they might be looking at the Mikko Rantanen contract from last year as a potential one as well. Of course, you get Svechnikov in there and kind of, weighing it all out in between. I personally think for Brady's sake, he's probably going to end up around I'm going to say 8.5 is probably what it's going to take, and I think the Sens are going to have to offer some form of a no trade, modified or full, something like that at the end of it, if they get him along on a long-term deal when he's eligible, and they're also going to have to put in at least a little bit of signing bonus money. At least I know they probably don't want to because they don't like to do that, but they might have to in this case. When it comes to Pettersson, I think it might take upwards of 9 based on what we're hearing now. If you look at the other contracts of Kaprizov and Hughes, Pettersson might be able to go more than 9 now, actually, because if you look at what Kaprizov's done in 1 year, Pettersson's got more than 1 year in the league. He's also a center. Kaprizov's a winger. They are probably going to argue that if he's getting 9, that Pettersson should have more than 9. So it might take 9.5 or something now to get Pettersson done. When it comes to Hughes, I think it's probably going to be somewhere around that 8.5 range, something like that. It really boils down to term, too. Obviously, it's going to also play a role, but it's going to get expensive, and we're going to see what these two Canadian clubs can figure out to hopefully get these guys to camp shortly so they don't miss too much time, because it is well documented that most of the time, at least, when players miss all or most of training camp, they typically do have slow starts. And obviously, if these guys are such impact players for their teams, if they have slow starts, that could greatly impact the team. So let me know what your thoughts are on all these contracts down below. What will you predict for Tkachuk, Pettersson, and Hughes, the remaining RFAs left? We'll discuss that further down in the comments. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.